the Nintendo Entertainment System. For a lot of us, playing games on these great cartridges, popping them in your system, sometimes having them work, other times having to freaking blow on them to get them to work, was our childhood. And you know what? Looking back at it, wasn't that bad. Because nowadays, you have tons of patches, constantly updates, finding bugs when you pay full price for a goddamn game. I almost kind of miss the simplicity of what these had to offer. But thankfully, there are a lot of new developers that continue to make fun games on the NES. But we're not here to talk about this one. We're here to talk about the angry video game nerd 8-Bit, which is inspired by all of his classic videos from over the years. And for me personally, I really enjoyed playing through this game and recognizing all of the different nods to his videos, which obviously also include elements of games that he's reviewed. A lot of the games he's covered over the years are games from my childhood, and he shit all over them. Shit on them. Maybe they deserved it, but I still liked them. You're gonna see a lot of elements from these games incorporated into AVGN 8-Bit. But what they do that's a bit different than their previous AVGN games is actually make these elements fun. And that's something that you're going to see over the course of its 6+ levels. Now, when you first start out the game, you have your choice between a few different difficulties. There's your easy, your normal, and your hard. My playthrough, you're going to see in this review, is from the normal difficulty setting, which is what I would suggest you play it on, because if you play it on hard, you're going to get destroyed because some of the boss fights are brutal. And if you play it on easy, you're probably a bit of a pussy. Don't be a pussy. But however you decide to play it, the key here is just make sure that the game is going to be fun for you. Now, interesting thing about this is it has a Mega Man style stage select. So you could play this in any order that you want. And unlike Mega Man, there's not going to be an advantage to playing it in a certain order because you don't gain any powers from the bosses at the end of each level. So fundamentally, no matter how you play it, it's always going to be the same in a way because there's no powers gained. The only way to really power up your nerd is to grab gun power. And what's cool about this is it works very Blaster Master-esque, where you can power up your gun, but if you die, you'll lose all of your power. If you take hits, you'll lose it incrementally. And then there are also sub-weapons, and there's a whole bunch of these. Some of them shoot projectiles in an arc pattern. Some of them will make you invincible. And then there is the absolute godsend, which is Shit Pickle. Shit Pickle is the best power-up in the entire game and will save your ass in the most brutal of moments. So if you get it, try to keep it until the end. Because these boss fights are going to make you their bitch. I don't know who designed these boss fights, but he's an asshole. The boss fights are the most brutal parts of the entire game, especially the final boss, which I'm not going to get ahead of myself and I won't show as to not spoil that part of the game, because one of the things I enjoyed the most about the modern release of AVGN 8-Bit is the fact that it plays out like an episode. You're going to have an introduction and an ending, but you will get short clips as you're playing through as well that help move the story along for the game. Now, if you decide to wait and pick it up on a physical cart and play it on your NES, you're only going to get the game itself and you're obviously not going to get these full motion video sequences. So this might be something that you want to double dip in, because I found the episodic content of the experience to be pretty enjoyable. If you're a longtime fan of the AVGN and you're up to snuff on all the content he's released over the years, which I certainly am, you're going to no doubt notice references and elements pulled from some of the games that he's covered on his channel. And while I don't think you necessarily need to be an AVGN fan to enjoy the game, because I think it's a good game on its own, you will certainly have a much better time, more laughs, and an overall better experience if you're at least somewhat familiar with a lot of his videos. For me personally, I've been watching James since almost the beginning, which it's crazy to think that that's been well over a decade at this point. And I actually had the opportunity to meet James several years ago at a convention, and he was just as cool as you'd expect him to be. But getting back to the game, I found all 6 of the original levels that you can play, which I played in a very weird order. I went almost clockwise, to be so much fun. A nice level of challenge. It didn't feel unfair at all. It was a challenge, but a good one. And if you're good at these types of games, it's going to reward you, because being able to keep your gun power throughout the entirety of a level and get to the boss with it means you will absolutely destroy the boss, as long as you don't take too many hits and get downgraded right away. Each level introduced a unique environment and theme that draws inspiration from his series. Lots of different enemy types. They have attacks and clear patterns and telltale signs on when they're gonna hit your ass. And as you work your way through, you're eventually gonna get to that boss, and odds are you're gonna get destroyed. And depending on how many lives you have, hopefully a few, if you fail a few times, eventually it's going to give you a shit pickle power-up, which will be your saving grace. This got me through some of the hardest boss fights in the game, and I'm not afraid to say that I used it every single time. Now, if you don't like the idea of getting a really powerful power-up to assist you with these boss fights, it's pretty simple. Just don't use them. But for a lot of players, it's going to be a saving grace, and was a nice addition and inclusion to the game, so it was certainly appreciated. AVGN 8-bit controlled really good, so I never felt like I was getting hit and it was cheap. I never felt like I was dying unless it was my fault. There aren't a lot of gotcha deaths where something's placed in a way where it's meant to get you for the first time, and then after you fall into a pit, something cheap knocked you off. You learned your mistake and then can proceed that way. I like that it didn't rely on some of the unfair mechanics that were common in NES games back in the day. It introduced a lot of modern elements, and they managed to make these work, even though this is a genuine NES game that we're playing. If you do decide to play this on one of the modern platforms, they have some nice accessibility features, which I certainly took advantage of because I don't like screen shake, I don't like screen flash, so I turn these things off. There's obviously the extra content that's not going to be included in the NES release as well. But this is one of those games that has really satisfying gameplay because the design of it understands what it is that makes these simplistic games fun. And that's challenging level design, tight controls, a nice visual style, and a banger soundtrack that's going to delight you throughout the entirety of the time you play this. Couple that with the fact that it's tied into a video series that has delighted and entertained us for many, many years, and you have a game that is simply put a must-play. I had so much fun with this that I almost want to torture myself and try playing through it again on the hard mode. But I don't quite know if I want to inflict that type of harm on myself because I feel like it might enrage me. Just a little. The normal mode, though, didn't quite manage to do that, but again, that was because of the inclusion of Shit Pickle and the fact that he was given to me in my most dire of moments when I had literally no lives left and was stuck on a boss. If you enjoy 8-bit style NES games, this is one you should pick up and play. Doesn't matter the platform, it's guaranteed to give you some fun moments, a few frustrating moments, but overall, you're gonna have some fun with it. And I think something that I really want to point out about these games that confine themselves to the limitations of a piece of retro hardware is I feel like it forces the developers to be more creative in their design because they don't have near limitless possibilities to execute their vision. I hope you enjoyed my review of AVGN 8-bit. I know this is quite a bit different than the types of videos that I typically do, but I did want to try something that's a bit more entertaining and fun versus just my matter-of-fact style, because it's not too often that I have the opportunity to cover an indie game that's actually something I've been familiar with for a long time, which is absolutely the case with AVGN and the work that James has done with that particular character. Even though the content that I create is very different than the type that James creates, I'm still inspired by his work and the work that he continues to do. So if you're a longtime fan of AVGN, and if you've played the previous AVGN games and you enjoyed those, this is definitely the best one to release to date. I had an absolute blast with it, and I do intend on playing more of it, which isn't necessarily something I can say about all the games I review. They did a really great job with this, and it was really hard to be angry, really, about anything in the game because it felt fair. It was fun. It didn't feel cheap like the previous AVGN games. It didn't really make me mad. Even the final boss, which kicked my ass, didn't really make me mad. I was still having a good time. And I think at the end of the day, that's what video games are supposed to be, right? They're supposed to be fun. And James sharing his experiences over the years about the games that made him mad as a kid and exaggerating a bit some of the games that maybe some of us enjoyed, but it definitely had some flaws, is his shtick. We all just want to have a good time. So whether that's the content we watch or the games that we play, I hope you got even just a sliver of that out of this review and my different approach to covering this particular game. So I appreciate you watching, and until next time. Some of these are games that he shit on. They were a part of my childhood, and he shit on them. That bastard.